StraightallDay.com.
Dre Baldwin, workonyourgame.com, workonyourgameuniversity.com. Topic of this video is change later to never. And this one is actually pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to explain it anyway because that's the reason why I'm making the video. This one means that the next time you tell yourself that you're going to do something later, instead change the word later and say, I will do it never. Now, this doesn't always translate literally, because sometimes, not all the time, and not most of the time, but sometimes we will tell ourselves we're going to do something later, and then we actually do it later. But many times when we tell ourselves that we're going to do something later, first of all, what happens is that later keeps getting pushed back, and delayed. So that thing we keep adding time to the situation, and it happens way longer after we initially thought about doing it. And the other thing is, oftentimes we tell ourselves we'll do something later, and it literally does not happen. We never get around to it because, as the saying goes, life gets in the way, other things come up, and by the time we finally get around to when we would have done it, a whole bunch of other things have crowded in on us and jumped onto our list of things to do, and we never get around to it. So the reason why I'm telling you to change your laters to never, next time you tell yourself you'll do something later, just tell yourself you'll do it never, is to let you make a binary decision about whether or not it's really important that you get that thing done. Because if it's important that you get something done, you won't tell yourself that you'll do it later. What's the challenge of telling yourself to do something later? The challenge is you may not be around when that later comes about. So if you say, I'll do this, it's the beginning of July, I'll do it at the beginning of August. Well, there's no guarantee that you will be here alive at the beginning of August. And there's no guarantee that your schedule is going to be clear of other important things, more important things to do at the beginning of August, for which you will have time to do this thing that you are delaying right now. You might not even forget to do it. You might not, if you don't write it down or put it on a list or something, you may forget that you were supposed to do this thing. And again, it just is completely out of your mind. As they say, out of sight, out of mind. You forget that you were going to do it, and now there it goes off into the abyss, and it never happens. Most of the time when we delay things, that means we're not going to do them at all, because again, we're human. Other stuff just pops up in our lives, and we're being inundated with messages and requests and information all day, every day. It's human for us to forget stuff that we thought we were going to do because other stuff just pop up, and we allow these other things to pop up. So if you tell yourself next time you say I'm going to do it later, and you change it to I'm going to do it never, now you got to think about it. Now you got to think about it. Okay, am I okay? Here's the question you're going to ask yourself. When you say, instead of later, you say never, you say, am I okay with never getting this thing done? Is it okay if this never actually happens? And if the answer is yes, then here's another great thing that happens. You may realize that maybe you never should have thought about doing this thing in the first place. It wasn't essential, it's not that important, and if you don't do it at all, that's completely fine. That is one of the options that you're going to have when you tell yourself later as opposed to, tell yourself never as opposed to later. The other thing that happens when you tell yourself never as opposed to later is that you say, you know what, I'm not okay with this thing never happening. I need this thing to actually happen. So you know what, I'm not going to tell myself to do it later. You know what, let me just take care of it and do it right now. And then you will move yourself to urgent, immediate action and do something about the situation now, which is what you should do. That should be your habit anyway, instead of telling yourself you'll get to it when you get to it, which means more things will be gotten to immediately in a moment, and you are building the habit, you're building the internal muscle, the discipline, if you will, of shortening the space between idea and action, which is actually what we want. That's the outcome that you actually want. And when you start telling yourself that later actually means never, you will start to shorten the space between idea and action, and you'll start to really decide. You'll start to, what's the word I'm looking for here? You'll just decide the value of things that you're thinking about doing. Do I really want to do this? Does it matter if I never get around to doing it? And sometimes you're going to say, no, it doesn't matter. I don't really need to do this. Let me just delete this. I'm not going to do it at all. And now you're also not putting it on your subconscious mind's list of to-dos, all these things you got sitting. It's kind of like Hoarders. Remember that TV show Hoarders, where you just hoard all this stuff and it's just sitting in your closets and in your garages, and it just adds up over time. You never throw it all away. See, if you just start telling yourself that I'm going to do this never, I'm never going to do it, well, you're starting to clean out your closet, so to speak. You're cleaning out the garage, and you don't have all these old ideas and old intentions sitting in your garage that you were supposed to get to because you told yourself you would get to it later. See, those things just start to add up, and they just build up all this mental gunk in our minds that are caking up our mental systems because we never get back around to them, and we're putting everything in the business world. Sometimes they call it the parking lot, like ideas that we may get to at some point, but we have no urgent intention of getting to them now. I don't really like the idea of the parking lot. I mean, I get why it exists. What I do is I keep a list of things that I want to get to. The only reason I'm not getting to them is because maybe we don't have the resources. We don't have the people. We don't have the software. We don't have the technology. Something else has to happen first. But it's not because they're just sitting there just to sit there because we didn't want to get to them in the moment. We don't want to get to them in the moment. They may not be that important. Maybe that's why we didn't get to them. So what you're doing here is really building an internal muscle that throws out the garbage that is actually garbage. And you get to the stuff that matters, the stuff that does actually matter. And now you got to hold yourself accountable to the question, does this matter or does it not matter, rather than let me just put everything on a list and decide later if it matters. See, we don't want to do things later. We want to do things now or do them never, one or the other. So with all that said, folks, Work on Your Game University, that's the place where I do all of our coaching. You want to get access to all of our trainings, all of our programs. We have programs on discipline, programs on confidence, on mindset, on sales, on doing cold calling, on prospecting, on relationship building, on networking, on collaborations, on everything when it comes to systemization, when it comes to strategy, when it comes to holding yourself accountability, and you can get access to me as your direct coach. All of that is available to you as a member of Work on Your Game University, and we're in the midst of upgrading that university. We're going to make it even better. The people who are in, you're going to be in. No matter what changes we make in the future, if you're already in, you're in. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link's down below in the description to this video. Work on your game. Dre all day.